So I had to go and get my vehicle inspected this morning. And
Okay.
long story short, it's because my vehicle was in an accident, not my fault, a couple of months ago. And in order to get a restored salvage title, which is needed for vehicles that have been in accidents and whose repairs cost more than the value of the car, I had to go get it inspected before my insurance company will pay me. The vehicle's fine. It just has cosmetic damage, and the vehicle is 10 years old. So, like, the cosmetic damage exceeds the current value of the car. Anyways, I drive an electric vehicle, Naomi, and the gentleman who is inspecting my car comes out and he's looking under the hood and he's like, "What the hell is that?" And I go, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Do you have a four-cylinder engine?" Now, I don't know anything about cars. And I'm like, sure, it could be a four-cylinder engine. And he's
It
like,
could.
wait, is this a Nissan Leaf? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, is this an electric vehicle? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you don't have a four-cylinder engine. That, my friend, is a battery. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. So after I made a complete fool out of myself multiple times with my limited knowledge of cars, namely where the VIN is located in my car, how to open and close the hood, pulling up the battery and mileage information on the dash, I managed to get my restored salvage title. And so now I get a nice check from my insurance company. We can all move on with our lives. Anyways,
It's
the reason I bring that up, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, it's just wild to me that he didn't like like the only thing I had to do when I got my emissions tested last time was I opened up the gas tank and showed him the mileage and that was it.
Well, the restored salvage is a level 3 inspection. It might differ by state. I assume California would be even more stringent than Arizona. But the idea is it's a vehicle that was quote unquote totaled by your insurance company. And if you want to continue driving it or using it, you have to prove it's not leaking fluids as you drive down the road. So it's,
Okay.
checking it out and making sure there's not, like sparks coming off your battery or, maybe the battery's dragging against the bottom of the road as you drive down it, et cetera, et cetera. But the reason I bring that up, Naomi, is I want all of our listeners to realize we like to think we know a thing or two about relationships, relationship culture, dating, etc., etc. But that's the limit of our knowledge. Please do not go outside and take anything else we say with anything more than a grain of salt, because we are completely incompetent at basic life functions most of the time. Anyways,
Joel's Joel's
roll
speaking
episode
for himself.
music.
Joel is speaking for himself at this point.
Yeah, maybe it's just a matter of my self esteem. Roll episode music. Welcome back to Why Will No One Date These Guys. It's probably because we don't know anything about cars. I'm Joel Guy.
I'm Naomi Guy, and I have to admit that when Joel said roll music, I was expecting to hear the music in my headphones.
Yeah, we're not that advanced. We do technically have a soundboard. I don't know how it shows up. Let's see. Just so our listeners know, we are A+ podcast recorders now using a platform that doesn't drop our signal constantly, so we're talking over each other and it looks like I'm mansplaining things to Naomi when in reality I can't even see that she's talking. Anyways, Naomi, that is a very long-winded intro. It is time for us to get into the meat of our episode, and by the meat I mean the sweet, and by the sweet I mean the drink we try every week.
I don't have a drink, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Last time we tried Shonen brand elderberry cream soda. I was pleasantly surprised by that. It was very tasty. This time I have Shonen brand banana cream soda, and I'm excited for this. I'm a sucker for a good banana cream pie. There's a lot of terrible banana cream pie out there, but there's some very good banana cream pie in this world. If life ever feels like it's not worth living, find yourself a pie place near you. Get yourself a big slice of banana cream pie. Reevaluate after you consume that and take a nap.
There's this place in San Diego that just serves pies, like meat pies and regular pies. Is it good?
Oh, hot damn, that's pretty good. Yeah, it is like liquid banana cream pie. It is very nice. I love it. Now, I don't know where you can purchase Shonen brand outside of like Asian weeb shops where like you walk in and there's just a billion like plastic anime figurines off on one side and then like imported Japanese snacks on the other side. But you know what? If there's ever a reason to go, it is for Asian sodas you can't purchase at normal grocery stores.
This
Hmm.
is so crazy because this is two back-to-back drinks that you like. Like, I don't think this is one ever happened, but also I think this is the first ones that you've liked this year. Like, we're in April and you're just like, I like something finally after 4 months.
It's true. This is 2020 door, Naomi. It's important to open just as many doors as you close.
Damn, that was like very Yoda of you, and I appreciated it.
You're welcome. I don't know. We have an episode, but like it's kind of loosely organized. Basically, I compiled some news I don't think Naomi has heard about dating apps, and I wanted to kind of bounce them off her, get a reaction. Before we jump into that, I don't know. Should we discuss how we are progressing with 2020 Door, our mantra for the year, which is showing the door to things, giving up on things, whether it be relationships, personal projects, whatever. Sunk
Well,
cost fallacy, listeners.
yeah, let's get into that. I would say that I have started a new lifestyle. I had a lifestyle change, so I showed the door to my old lifestyle. Sure, great, doing that.
Naomi's gay now.
Yes, I am. Um, I don't know. I would say that 2024 has been a good year so far. Definitely losing momentum in school, so I would like to show that to the door and get my momentum
Ah,
back. Open up the
yeah.
door to more momentum. But of course, it's probably because I've been comparing myself to, you know, my grad journey to my friend's grad journey, and they're all, out of school by now, and I still have like 6 weeks left. So that sucks. But moving
If
past that.
if it makes you feel any better, a friend of the show, RJ, I think spent 6 years at ASU because he switched degree paths twice, and now he makes like $120,000 a year. I don't know how much he makes. Please don't go after RJ for money. He makes good money. He can comfortably live in Los Angeles. So, yeah, sometimes it takes a little time to mature in the bottle, Naomi. Okay, you can prize yourself as a fine vintage. Did you start anything like books or movies that you were just like, this is crap, I'm not going to waste my time, and gave it up?
Oh gosh, yeah, so many books I've started. I feel like I have, started a bunch of books. I've been really good at ending movies that I don't like. Like I'll give it a good solid 20 minutes and I'm just like, "Ugh, fuck this." Um but The Players, it has Coach from New Girl in it, so I wanted to watch it, and Jane from Jane the Virgin. So I watched that and I gave it a good 20 minutes and I was like, this writing sucks. So that was the
Damn.
last movie I didn't watch all the way through. What about you? How's your 2020 door going?
We talked about media we liked recently. I think No Hard Feelings was an example of me dropping something. Um, there's a decent number of books I pick up at like Goodwill or thrift stores or just random bookshops I'm at that I'll like skim through and be like, there's not much to it. It really takes a lot to immerse me, and I think because I'm not forcing myself to read that, it makes the stuff that I find that I do enjoy all the more enjoyable. I'm currently reading a book which may or may not come up on our podcast, which is about uh, U.S. state authority and how that influenced our culture's perception of homosexuality in America over the 20th century. And there's just that sounds incredibly boring, but it's all about how like different administrative mechanisms in US history throughout the 20th century heavily influenced how the public understood and like perceived homosexuality. And it's this really fascinating deep dive that has all sorts of like completely hilarious anecdotes. Like at multiple points, the military was concerned about gay people entering their ranks. And so they would like administer these written tests, which were like, have you ever been attracted to a man? Have you ever felt that like your masculinity had diminished? Do you feel that your sexual organs are impotent? Just like the most like obvious nonsensical questions that make no sense. But then they'd also do like physical inspections, and one of the things they'd look for was like enlarged rectums of male candidates. And I'm like, good lord, administrative state, this is the best you can do. And of
I have
course, the
so
reasons
many
for all of this in the first
questions.
place were so ridiculous. No, we will probably discuss this. It's a very fascinating deep dive into like how sexuality has been understood throughout American history, and there's some really fascinating intersections with racism, if you can believe this, and xenophobia, as well as disability culture. That's not something that I think the book really touches upon, but the elements of that are like very much there because there was this idea that certain physical features made you more likely to be gay, and if you were gay, that meant you were more likely to be on the public dole, which meant that you were going to be a burden on the state, so we shouldn't allow you into our country. There's just so many ideas that were jam packed together without really being examined. Um, I also briefly dipped into furniture restoration last year. Technically, I'm still doing like furniture repairs and whatnot, but in a more limited capacity. Mostly, I've just been working on a cabinet project, painting all of our kitchen cabinets, installing new handles, all that jazz. But yes, after the better part of a year working on a chair, I was like, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. And I put it up on Craigslist, and someone who was more competent than me came and picked it up. But, it was like $10 at Goodwill. It wasn't the end of the world. And frankly, rather than having to worry about that and have it at the back of my mind is something I should be doing, I am free as a bird. It has escaped my grasp.
I think that's so funny because you're just a chairperson. You love your chairs. I never understood that, but you're just a chairperson.
Well, there's this idea, and I mean this to be serious. I'm not trying to be facetious. You spend a lot of your life on your feet, so get good shoes. You spend a lot of your life lying down in bed, get a good mattress. You're going to spend a lot of time sitting on your butt, get a good chair, right? Like, there are certain things you can skimp on, and then there's other things where it's worth, spending a couple $100. And especially when you start digging in, or like, oh, having the bad shoes can give me like posture and like foot issues. Having a bad chair can give me like spinal adjustment problems, etc., etc.
I just want everyone to know that the only reason why I bring this up is because Joel, at one point when we were living together, had 16 chairs just to himself. And we lived in a
Mm-hmm.
three-bedroom, and Joel only occupied one of those bedrooms. And he had 16 chairs.
I didn't even have a bedroom. I just made a fort out of those chairs and crawled into it every night. Yeah. Look, it's important, Naomi, that everyone have like a basic idea of creating like medieval barricades. Like if that isn't a skill you've picked up so far, I suggest you read up on that. I really think that the future is going to have a lot of barricades. The 2024 elections are nearly upon us. Figure out how to barricade yourself in your house, on a street, in the middle of a town square, etc., etc.
I have like this weird like moat situation that's going on outside of my window, and I would like it's not full of water, but it's definitely moat-like. So maybe I should fill it with water. That could be my barricade.
Brilliant, brilliant. So enough with the chit chat. Clearly, our listeners now know that we actually like each other. We're not just doing this for the money. Naomi, let's dive into
What
our
money?
episode and discuss updates to dating apps. So this is some like random dating app stuff that I found. I random in the sense that like it's kind of sporadic, but like I did curate it. There's some interesting stuff and some trends I want to dig into, and I genuinely don't know how much of this Naomi is aware of. I think it's outside of her like circle of like media consumption. So we'll see. We'll see. So the first one. Niwot Man launches TruBluu, a dating app for progressives. This is by Nikki Andrews in December of last year. So in 2020, Dennis Hefter was talking with his two sons about dating apps when they brought up an increasingly common pattern seen among Gen Z: refusal to date outside of their political party. After seeing that so many women on dating apps stated in their profile they would not date conservatives, Hefter, a 61-year-old from Niwot, thought of making an app centered around people's social views. I'm sorry, I have forgotten to throw a link into my summary. The Daily Camera, Colorado, September of last year, an article written by Nikki Andrews. So Hefter, 61-year-old from Niwot, Colorado, thought of making an app centered around people's social views. On September 5th of last year, TruBluu, a dating app for progressives, was launched statewide and has since had more than 50 users sign up. When a user first signs up, they'll be asked to fill out some general personal information, including their name, birthday, location, preferred pronouns, gender, sexuality, and ethnicity. The user is then asked to rank their level of passion on 6 social issues, including support of pro-choice, better climate legislation, expanded queer rights, universal health care, stronger gun control, and relaxed immigration laws. Hefter says the app is designed for those wanting long-term relationships, and despite what some think, is open to all political views. Honestly, we try to stay away from politics, Hefter said. Being progressive isn't a political stance, it's being concerned about social issues that affect people. That doesn't mean you're a Democrat or a Republican. Despite this, he says he understands that social issues have become political over recent years, and said even then, longer relationships occur when partners' political views align. A 2018 national survey by the Pew Research Institute found that 77% of married and cohabiting partners reported that the partner belongs to the same political party. During onboarding, users are also asked their gender and ethnicity preferences before being able to add up to 6 photos to their profile. Hefter says users are then paired with other people with similar levels of passion for each social issue. If you align on big social issues, the odds of you having a good, strong, solid relationship are good, Hefter says. If you don't, the odds are against you. So, with that, Naomi, I'd like to hear your initial reactions to TruBluu.
It makes sense to me. I agree that like you shouldn't be labeled as, a Democrat just because you believe that everyone should, have basic human rights. It's like wild to me that all of these things have become a political issue, but, moving past that, I have like all these, okay, I can't say that. The right stuff came up with the idea of just having people that were conservative on it. So it makes sense to me that more like democratic apps or progressive apps are, you know, coming out with the same idea, but, democratic.
Well, I want to correct that. The right stuff didn't create that idea. As we discussed on that episode, there were over like 20 separate apps that were already focused on like Republicans
Yeah,
dating.
but
There's like Trump
the
singles, Trump voters, I love Trump, kiss make out with Trump.com, .gov, .gop, all that stuff.
that was the big one, is what I'm trying to say. Like that
Yeah.
was the big one that people
That had
talk
the
about.
Peter
So,
Thiel money.
yeah. Peter Thiel. Well,
Friend of the show, Peter Thiel.
talk about kissing Trump's ass.gov.
Oof.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on TruBluu? I did throw a link into their main page with you. I'm wondering if you can take a look.
I think it's kind of weird how happy the two people on the front page are, but like moving past that, I don't know. I don't get this questionnaire because the way that I'm looking at it, it's on a scale. Okay, so it's like not very passionate to extremely passionate. I think they should have
Mm-hmm.
taken the OK Cupid route where it's like, tell me why you're passionate about this. Tell me why you're not passionate about it. Things like that. I feel like that
Yeah.
would be more of like it'd be a better way of doing things. I also understand that not many people would be interested in filling out, a 500-word essay for each question. So that's understandable, but it just doesn't feel as inclusive as he's trying to make it sound.
I agree. A couple things in that article stood out to me. One of which was the idea you can pick your gender and ethnicity preferences.
Yeah.
Um, that's like the whole problem on Grinder, where like what is it like? What's that cutesy phrase that they use, which is like no Asians, no Latinos, or whatever. And it's just racism, but like it's an attempt to be like, oh, these are just my preferences. And yeah, I think that the response to other dating apps offering that is not to allow the same structures in your quote unquote progressive network too. I mean, there's some other weird stuff. I don't understand the logo. The logo is like a J and a L in green looking at each other, and their faces, and they're smiling. It doesn't seem to have any relation to the app. I'm not saying a logo's everything in terms of company, but like your logo should have some relationship to like what your company is.
The entire website looks like it was AI generated. Like it doesn't
It
look like
does.
anyone put any thought into it. It looks like if you were to just send this to me with no context, I'd be like, "Are have you been hacked? Like who is this? Like why am I clicking on this link?"
Yeah, I mean, do you have the page open?
Yeah.
Scroll down to the bottom. There's a
Okay.
interesting photo at the bottom of the first page.
Yeah, exactly. Just
There's just a woman. I can't even tell. She's like angry. She has her fists raised, but she's like angry, but also smiling at the same time. It's this
I don't understand why that's in
impenetrable,
there.
yeah, a look, and it's next to the comment box where you can submit comments for the app. I don't know. Like On a deeper level, I think we talked about some of the problems with conservative dating apps and the fact that like conservatives don't mind dating progressives, but progressives mind dating conservatives. And that seemed very likely to us that there would be very small spheres that would find this like beneficial. And the problem with this app is what's stopping someone from just lying about their interests like a lot of guys do on dating apps? Like, if you just want to pick up women, download this app and, say, oh, I'm passionate about all these issues. And you don't have to, flip the slider all the way. You can, adjust it and be like, well, I'm really passionate about gay rights because I have a gay uncle and, I understand how tough these issues are. But like, the big problem is there's no barrier to entry, right? There's no proof that you have to offer up that you're, this person. I think there is something to this idea that, people are more likely to be in a long-term relationship if their values align. I just don't know how you weed out people who are just trying to pick up women and people who like are genuinely passionate about these issues who want like-minded people. So I do think the app is going to struggle with growth in that regard. I did check out the App Store, and reviews are mixed. There's not a lot of market penetration so far. Some people say that it's like not available in their region, and it's just like collecting data. So I think it might still be Colorado limited. But yeah, Google Play, they have a 3.1 star review total with 39 reviews and 5,000 total downloads. On iPhone, they have a 4.7 review, which might be due to like optimization for iPhone, and 19 ratings, which is, nowhere near any other dating app. Even some of those goofy ones we were talking about, like clown dating and rich people dating and AIDS dating and all that stuff. So yeah, I don't know if this is going to gain traction. I'm not saying this approach is wrong. I just feel like one of the big problems of penetrating, the dating app market is you need a lot of money to let people know you exist. I think starting at a small scale can work, but you got to have like local support. You got to have, promotional stuff going out to colleges and universities. You got to put money into organizing events. You got to have incentives to bring people on, like maybe special features for the first users who download it. Maybe, a couple of free months subscription, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. We'll see how this progresses. But yeah, I don't think the answer to people having problems finding like-minded individuals is in this specific dating app.
I
Anything
think that
else?
honestly, yeah, I think that honestly I learn the most about people when I go on dates with them and I ask them very like pointed questions, like how do you feel about these things? And I do that on the first date on purpose because it's like, okay, can you handle one, the intensity of me wanting to talk about anything at any time, as well as what are your views on this topic? So I know this doesn't work for everyone, but I would rather get it out of the way on the first date than deal with it, on the third date after I've started liking the guy. So yeah, it's multiple benefits, but I don't feel like you know having someone give a scale of 1 to 10 of how progressive they are is a again it's not a good way of measuring who you're gonna date and how much you're gonna like them and their views.
Right. And I agree with you. I think people don't necessarily want to fill it out, but an explanation section would go a long way.
Yeah.
So, Naomi, I know you said that you like going out on dates with people, but that's a lot of work, a lot of energy, a lot of time setting up, a lot of money you probably have to spend. What if you didn't have to go out on dates at all? Great. Have I got a solution for you? Uh, so CBC Canada had an article on March 22nd of this year by Brittany Bilhetti. It is From AI Dating to Flirt Coaches, How AI is Changing Dating for Better or Worse. Now, we have discussed a little bit of this content already. I'll gloss over some of it after we discuss this next part. The thing that stood out to me in this article was a new company, a company that provides an AI that goes on dates for you. How does this work, Naomi? Oh, Naomi's
What
giving me the
the
most
fuck?
confused look. Some companies are alleviating people's dating fatigue by creating AI simulated blind dates. Volar dating, VOLAR dating, which launched in the US earlier this year, is one such company. In a brief onboarding process, users tell the chatbot about themselves, their age, location, and hobbies. Then, using AI, the bot simulates a first date between two people. So, let's take a heterosexual relationship. Woman fills out her profile, men fills out his profile. The company then has the two bots chat to each other, each of the users can see the chat. Based upon how the chat progresses, they can decide if this is someone they want to spend time with. The explanation I've seen is like, this chat is a way to reveal information about the other person in a way that like avoids the awkwardness of having to like have those conversations on the first date. But there's a small problem. It's an AI chatbot, so sometimes it just hallucinates information. A CBC test, as this article notes, found that it sometimes extrapolates information to make up new talking points that may not be true, such as saying an avid reader read a particular book when they didn't. So, like, if you say you're an avid reader and someone's like, oh, have you read the new Stephen King novel? The AI is going to be like, oh, Stephen King is a popular writer. This person enjoys reading popular writers. Therefore, they have probably read Stephen King. Yes, I love Stephen King. Stephen King is my favorite, etc., etc. I read a piece. I forget where it came from, but someone was like, there was an interesting amount of customization you could have with your interests. He said on his profile he was a foodie, and then it was like, are you a going out to eat foodie or a making food at home foodie? And he's like, wow, that's really impressive. Like that's a distinction that I don't think a lot of people would understand. It's really cool that the chatbot understands this. But then in the actual conversations, even though he said he was a going out to eat foodie, it kept implying that he was a make food at home foodie. And he's like, I don't know how to cook. I don't know any of that. Why would it say these things? Thoughts on Volar
I'm
dating, Naomi?
What the fuck? I'm sorry, but what the fuck? I'm just like, who came up with this idea? And also, another part of like this is another good example of ask a bunch of questions and fill out long descriptions kind of dating app if you decide that you're going to participate in this. But also, who doesn't have the time? Who is that lazy that they're like, oh, I don't want to waste any time? That's such a man made thing. Like, this is made by a man. I
Yes, it
do not
is.
know a single woman that's like, oh, yeah, like this would be a good idea. This is how. What the fuck? This is like a step worse than like dating on a game server. Like you're like dating, like you're like going on dates like in Sims World or something, or like on Club Penguin. You know what I mean? Like this is worse than that.
I was reminded initially when we did our episode on dating and AI, or I guess it was more broadly about how AI technology is affecting relationships because we, discussed deep fakes and other stuff too. But when we were discussing that, I was reminded of Cyrano de Bergerac, in the sense that like there's now a bunch of services out there where you can like say, hey, this girl just said this to me, what's a clever response, and it'll write a pithy semi clever response for you, in the same way as the classic novel slash play, I think it was a play, Cyrano de Bergerac, where the main plot is there's this very charming, witty man with a huge nose who's embarrassed to like confess his feelings for a girl. So in order to like fall in love with her and seduce her, he gets another man who's attracted to this girl to repeat the lines that he says to her. And so it's this, interesting kind of philosophical, meditative understanding of relationships where it's like, who is this girl falling in love with? Is she falling in love with like the guy who's the handsome person who's appearing and saying all these witty things, or the sentiment, the like words themselves, and this ugly person or person who thinks he's ugly behind them? There's definitely, please, more to the play. It's I would say it's also very funny, if you're into that sort of thing. But like you can see the same parallels to like AI chatbots today. Now I bring that up because this is a whole new level, right? It's not real people Cyrano de Bergeracing with real people. It's fake people pulling random bullshit from nowhere. And I was reminded when reading this of a pithy thing said by the philosopher and social critic Slavoj Zizek. Have you read anything of Zizek? Are you familiar at all with Zizek?
No, not at all.
Zizek is like, he's kind of the popular science of philosophy. I think he genuinely has like some interesting criticism of like our economy and like our media system and how we understand propaganda. But like he's a very prolific writer, and like he kind of just regurgitates book after book after book that all are the same general thing. There's also been some accusations of plagiarism. I think he's a very smart guy, but like I also think he's a bit overhyped in terms of like social commentary. But he had this very funny thing from 2014. In sorry 2013, on Valentine's Day, he wrote a piece for The Guardian in the UK, and he says, romance is maybe not yet totally dead, but its forthcoming death is signaled by object gadgets which promise to deliver excess pleasure, by which effectively reproduce only the lack itself. The latest fashion is the stamina training unit, a counterpart to the vibrator, a masturbatory device that resembles a battery powered light, so we're not embarrassed when carrying it around. You put the erect penis into the opening at the top, push the button, and the object vibrates until satisfaction. The product is available in different colors, levels of tightness, and forms that imitate all three main openings for sexual penetration. What one buys here is the partial object or the erogenous zone alone, deprived of the embarrassing additional burden of an entire person. How are we to cope with this brave new world which undermines the basic premises of our intimate life? The ultimate solution, of course, would be to push a vibrator into the stamina training unit, turn them both on, and leave all the fun to this ideal couple, with us, the two real human partners, sitting at the nearby table, drinking tea, and calmly enjoying the fact that without great effort, we have fulfilled our duty to enjoy. Um, yeah, vibrator inside a male sex toy. That is this app. It is taking away one of the most basic forms of like human connection and communication. And like it's this whole AI thing in a bubble. It's like, yeah, okay, there's awkward and embarrassing and frustrating parts of dating, but that's like a big part of humanity. There's also awkward and frustrating and embarrassing parts of like creating art. That doesn't mean like creating art is so not worthwhile that we should have machines do it all for us. Like take away the difficult, the onerous tasks of human existence with machinery. Don't like take away the joyful, pleasurable ones.
Well, as Candace Owens would say, that'd be unnatural if we took that away. No, I have to say, like, we are the children of the internet, and it's interesting to see how people have developed that and made it their own. I think that this is kind of a stupid idea, and it shouldn't have come about in the first place. But at the same time, it's just another innovation, and somebody somewhere is going to want to use it. So, you come up with a new idea, you do it. But this is a dumb one, and I don't think this should be done again.
I mean, I think part of the problem is, and the money is drying up, but um, everyone seems to think AI is the next big gold rush. That there's tens of trillions of dollars in value, and that if you just push AI in the right direction to the right use cases, investors could be on top of the next big thing, the next Facebook, the next Google, whatever. And so at this point, they're kind of just throwing money at anything that sticks. And if you dig down into the basic technology, it's all basically chat gpt just wrapped in different ways, where like it'll do outputs in one way or another and sound like one person or another, but it's fundamentally just chat gpt sending responses to your app, which then sends them to the person that's asking things. And I think all of this is just evidence that like AI is going to have some impact on our lives, but a lot of what we're hearing now is just hype. It's like total meaningless garbage where people are trying to get in on the money while the money's good. And once it dries up, we're going to see a whole heck of a lot less of this.
It's like, what were those things?
Pogs,
No, the art
NFTs,
pieces that, yeah, that people were buying that literally are
precisely.
worthless now. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of economic value, I don't know how to segue. So we've talked about two really stupid apps. I want to talk about general dating trends.
Okay.
And I don't know how much you're aware of this. So this is an article from February 9th of 2024, cbsnews.com by Megan Cerullo. It is titled Money Might Not Buy You Love, but the tab for finding romance online is rising. So it notes the ever increasing cost of dating apps, matchmaking services, and for those looking for an even bigger edge, love coaching can require singles to spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars in pursuit of finding a partner, and that's before the first date. Although most apps operate on a so-called freemium model, upgrades and premium features that dating services claim will boost your success rate can greatly increase expenses. Popular dating apps such as Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, The League, and others still offer free versions, but charge users for additional features the companies promise will deliver better experiences and more desirable romantic prospects as the services look to monetize their platforms. These can include paying for unlimited likes, gaining access to a list of users who like you, giving virtual gifts like flowers, being more visible on the app, setting more dating preferences, etc., etc. Now, Naomi, we've discussed a lot of this before. None of that is surprising. This article, however, had some additional details that I was unaware of. Research from Morgan Stanley found that about 32% of single people in the United States use online dating services. Over a quarter of these people pay for some level of dating services. So 7.5% of single people in the United States are paying money. So that's the reason all these companies are leaning in. It's because there are desperate people who are trying to get an edge up in a dating market that is incredibly difficult to get into. The average paying user spends between $18 and $19 a month on either subscriptions or a la carte purchases, such as, the super likes, the virtual flowers, whatever. Now, this does vary. On Match Group, Match Group's owned Hinge dating app, upgrading to Hinge Plus costs $100 for 6 months or $17 a month. This allows people to like an unlimited number of prospects, see who likes them, and be more choosy about prospective matches. Hinge notes that it offers a free membership along with it what it calls cost-effective subscriptions. Another dating app called The League costs $400 for 3 months. For that price, members are shown 5 prospects daily, can hide their age on their profiles, scout prospects from 2 cities at once, and receive other perks. Thoughts?
I think that statistic about 30 something percent is low. I'm going to start with that. That's my
Potentially.
first qualm. My next is only 7%, and these are multi-billion dollar companies. So that's, I guess they're publicly traded. I'm assuming that most of like Bumble and Tinder are publicly traded. But that still is like a small amount of the population that's actually using these premium subscription. I guess 7% of all of the United States, let's just say. Actually, I guess Tinder's worldwide, so I
So
just
I
feel like
pulled
these stats are too low. That's my
I
first
don't
qualm.
know, because I polled, and again, I have nothing really to base this off of. I said they were, say, 50 million single people in the United States. I multiplied that by
Joel, you are
oh
not just
oh
talking about single people. You're also talking about people in relationships that,
no, I
get
understand
some
that,
on
but
the side. Yeah.
the stat was like specific to single people. So
Okay.
I did misplace a decimal point, but it looks like if you were to assume 7.5% of those 50 million are paying $17 a month over 12 months, that is nearly $1 billion a year being spent on these platforms. So not a low amount, not a high amount, but like they're
Yeah.
making something, and I think they're only going to be monetizing further as time goes on. All
Yeah.
these Match kind of owns, the majority of the dating market in the United States. So if one of their apps does something, it's pretty likely everything else is going to do the same thing at some point. And I guess this also is indicative of why it's so difficult for other companies to gain a foothold. It's because, they have such a monopoly here.
My next question is if people have subscriptions on one site, let's just say they're on Tinder and Bumble, are they more likely or less likely to have subscriptions on both sites or just one?
Well, I think the article can kind of answer that. So there's also been a rise in people paying for dating coaches. Genuinely, I don't know what the value of a dating coach is because I think, unfortunately, the brutal reality is the majority of matchmaking now is luck, right?
Hmm.
You're throwing as many possibilities at the wall and hoping that like one of them actually materializes. But this notes that some dating coaches who help people find what they're looking for in a partner encourage their clients to upgrade to pricier dating app subscriptions. The premium paid services make a lot of sense to me, says Natalia Juarez, a dating coach who specializes in breakup recovery and dating strategy. Juarez compared shelling out on dating apps to paying for premium services from rideshare companies like Lyft and music streaming services like Spotify. People understand the value of upgrading, she says, is infiltrated all areas of life. Relationship coach Amy Leadingham also acknowledged the paradigm shift that has made people more comfortable paying up to make a love connection. I do recommend going to the paid sites over the free sites because the free sites are full of fake profiles and scammers. When you invest, you have more intention and it shows you're being more serious about online dating, she told CBS Money Watch. Um, the argument too is enhanced near the end of the article, and I don't think this is a good example because they cite the experience of this founder of a real estate marketplace website. But he says he's been paying for dating apps for years. So what he did is he signed up for paid versions of a handful of dating apps. He spent $1,000 a month on paid premium features through these apps, and he would get the chance to look at approximately 100 good profiles, which he'd whittle down to a date or two. He compared these features to going into a casino where you buy a bunch of chips, throw them in a slot machine where the wheels spin, and you hope you see someone attractive. Now, that said, he says he spent a lot of money on dating apps and ultimately has not found them that useful. He's found that the best connections he's made are through his social network. So take that with a grain of salt.
I don't know. I want to know who paid that dating coach to say to get up to subscriptions on your dating sites.
That's an interesting question because you can imagine that like dating coaches have like some kind of backdoor connection with like these dating apps where it's like, hey, if you recommend people to Tinder Plus, we'll give you, 10% off the top or whatever.
I think that there should be a new market of like matchmakers that are kind of like PR personnel where they know everyone and so they know someone to like match you with. You know what I mean? And so it's like, oh, I have this friend, you know what I mean? But they're actually just like a client. I guess that is just what a matchmaker does, but the way I
Maybe a little
think
bit.
about it, yeah.
Um, it's interesting you bring that up. I'm going to skip ahead to one of the last things I was going to discuss, and that is a Yahoo article. Remember Yahoo? Yahoo still exists. You're
I
reminded
just
of their
met
existence every so often.
I want you to know that I know people still with AOL emails. So don't even talk to me about Yahoo.
So this was an article from April 26th, actually last week, by Laura Clark on yahoo.com. Tired of dating apps? Real life single experiences are making a comeback. So to your point, I think maybe there's going to be a paradigm shift. I don't know how big it'll be, but some individuals are moving away from dating apps. While options like Bumble, Hinge, and Tinder saw years of steady growth by offering virtual places for people to connect, many users have started to notice their shortcomings. Endless in app conversations that don't lead to dates, fake profiles, limited free options, and an increased cringe factor when it comes to paying for supposedly better choices. While some users might not be breaking up with apps altogether, their eyes are definitely wandering to other options. These apps have noticed, with many shedding employees and rethinking their strategies. According to the New York Times, Match Group and Bumble have lost more than $40 billion in market value since 2021. But what's the alternative? Turns out, many people are opting for something a little retro. Some users are ready to trade in virtual experiences for real life ones. Enter companies like Equanimity Equation, which has hosted IRL single events, the Feels, sorry, that is quite the sentence. A company called Equanimity Equation hosts real life singles events known as The Feels. That is the name of the event, The Feels, in New
Okay.
York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. So, founder Ali Hoffman, 40, used her studies at Columbia University's Spirituality Mind Body Institute to create a multi-sensory approach to connecting with others. Just a side note, Ali, maybe you could use some of your experience creating approaches to connect people at Columbia University. I hear they're going through some things right now in terms of
Oh.
connections between students and faculty and the community and the police of New York. I don't know. Food for thought. People who buy a ticket for the Feels dating experience, which also includes polyamorous and sapphic editions and can range from $70 to $95 per event, pair up on activities like hugging another person for a period of time or even giving your partner a series of compliments. Hoffman launched the event in New York in 2022 in part to combat the bad behavior of ghosting and breadcrumbing, basically stringing someone along, that she was seeing on dating apps. While the average age of attendees is mid 30s, Hoffman said she's seen participants as young as early 20s, 21 is the minimum age since alcohol is served, to people in their 60s. Ticket prices are set with intention to ensure that people who join are really invested in their experience. This is about learning a toolkit for more meaningful interactions, she said. Initial thoughts.
I like this idea. I think it definitely gets rid of like the hookup culture like aspect of dating apps because I feel like a lot of friends that I have are kind of worried that people are that they're going on dates with are only invested in the sexual aspect and they feel like they kind of get played, quote unquote. And so if you meet someone at this event, it's more natural. It also like coaches you in a sense, and it helps get rid of that, thing in the back of your head that's saying, "Oh, he's only with me for the sexual aspect."
Yeah, I do think in person connections are good. I would say the one downside if you're doing these events where like hug this person for extended period of time, um, there's an element of social awkwardness in person where it's much harder to like not reciprocate unwanted affection. And you might feel like the odd person out if you're like, hey, I don't want to hug this guy who's like old enough to be my grandpa, or like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to hug this guy who like clearly hasn't showered in 3 weeks. I'm sure there's plenty of like really nice like connections, but I'm not sure exactly how they filter those out. Maybe they've figured out some way, but that would be my immediate concern. So it's not just that. There are other people who are working on in real life meetups that are more traditional of how you might think of them. So speed dating is coming back. There's a woman named Williams who's working on new speed dating options in New York, New Jersey, and DC that celebrate diversity and capitalize on social media. So one problem that is well known on dating apps is that certain minority groups have extreme difficulty making connections. I referenced Grinder earlier. I believe the two demographics that have the most difficulty in dating are Asian men and Black women. And these events, I think, are a good opportunity for people who might not normally have the chance to sort of like rise above the other people on dating apps and people's individual prejudices to put their best face forward and get a lot of positive interaction, or just interact with more people that they want to be interacting with because the pools that they might want to be interacting with are relatively low to begin with. So this is a company called We Meet, where We Met IRL. And the tickets are pretty cheap. Tickets are $30 per person. Each event is limited to 44 people. She believes that talking to 15 to 20 people over the course of the evening takes a lot of energy. She also says that the importance of these events is not to meet a lifelong partner, but rather to meet people in general and have fun. You probably won't meet your husband here, but it's okay. You're going to talk to men, she said. And when was the last time you talked to more than two single men in person face to face? Yeah, I think again to what you said about the last one, this is a good opportunity to build up social skills again, right? It seems significantly tougher than like just spending time on a dating app, but like being able to express your full personality rather than having to limit it to this like tiny box where like people are swiping through 1,000 of them in the space of a couple of days means that I think the opportunities for connection are greater and not lesser. You could argue the other side of the coin, which is, dating apps allow you to present the best version of yourself, and maybe like in person, you're not a particularly charming or, conventionally attractive person. But no, I genuinely do think there's a really good opportunity here. And I think what the article said at the beginning, which is a lot of people aren't necessarily putting down their phones, but they're balancing use of these in person events with their phones, is probably going to be the future. And I can imagine, whether it's a for-profit business or even like just a non-profit group, like a student group at colleges starting to do this, where they have like monthly connections for single people, where it's like, hey, we'll provide some pizza and some drinks, and you can just come and meet people and chat about whatever your major is. Any other thoughts?
But was that a period on the end of that sentence?
There's no moisture in my mouth. I'm having difficulty speaking right now.
Okay, drink some of your soda. No, I definitely think that these like in-person activities are good ideas for a variety of reasons. I definitely think that the paying to get in though is an issue that like it is an issue that could arise. Um, but I also think that these are easily organized. So, like on a college campus, it could be very easy, to go to something like this and make it a free event, and have people in the same age group. Hopefully, no professors are, coming in and participating in these events because that would be weird. But moving forward, I know professors are people too, but they can get weird and yeah. Um, so I like this idea. I like this trend towards dating people in real life. I think that you were right. Like there is a small portion of yourself that you can give, and advertise on a dating app, and they don't give you a lot of space to do more until the first date. And as long as you're not going on the AI date where two robots talk to each other and talk about things that aren't even of interest to you, I think you'll do good. I think that I like this trend. I really do.
Yeah. Um, there is one last company they cite in this article, and that's called Flashpack. It's a travel company that organizes group adventures for solo travelers in their 30s and 40s. So it was created by founders Lee Thompson and Radia Vyas to combat the worsening loneliness epidemic, and the company aims to create meaningful friendships through travel. Solo adventurers can book trips to places like Tanzania, Finland, or Sri Lanka, where they will meet others who might share similar interests. In fact, according to Flashpack, 80% of attendees keep in touch after their experience. Of course, Thompson said, sometimes these friendships may develop into something further, leading to long term relationships or even marriages, but if that happens, it tends to be more impromptu. Um, I don't know. Seems like a good idea. I mean, I think some of the same things apply where it's like, what if someone's getting too handsy and you're in Finland? Uh, might be some difficulties there. I think honestly, one of the sad things is I don't know if there's anything necessarily wrong with these, but it kind of betrays the fact we don't have third spaces anymore where you can just mingle with people you wouldn't normally spend time in. No one really goes to a neighborhood bar every week unless, you're a alcoholic. Sorry. But yeah, like it used to be a thing where, you'd finish your shift at the manufacturing plant, go down the street to the bar and, spend an evening there with your friends. Or, you'd have like a book club or, a lot of people our age aren't going to church anymore. And those are opportunities to bond with, people who weren't necessarily in your social circle, your class, your ethnic group, your sex, your age, et cetera, et cetera. And it's cool that these opportunities are popping up. And I think that there's definitely a demand for them. But I think, one of the reasons they're successful is because people feel really uncomfortable like trying and going out as adults to meet new people in their areas because there's just so few natural opportunities to do that.
No, I agree. I was literally just talking about this with one of my classmates, and he's an elderly gentleman in my program, and he was talking about he was a physician for many years, but he got his undergrad degree at Oxford, and he was talking about how every night after, classes were finished, he would go out to the bar, or they would go and play squash, or, things of that nature. And he was like, it's very odd that like we don't do these bonding activities after class. And even if it isn't, a bonding activity, it's something that, gets your mind off of the program, and, you have a little fun. So yeah, I definitely agree that we definitely need to re-implant third spaces, but the world is just so crazy and expensive that not many people even want to go to the bar because drinks at the bar are like $10 standard and up.
What a sitch. There is one last thing I wanted to mention, which I thought was like an interesting comment. So there's this article, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on it, from The Guardian, April 28th of this year by Laura Spinney. And it notes the science isn't there. Do dating apps really help us find our soulmate? So it opens and is talking about a federal lawsuit that was filed in the United States last year, which accuses the Match Group, which owns Tinder, Hinge, and OkCupid, of a predatory business model and using, addictive practices in order to keep people in their ecosystem, even though like they can't actually promise love or relationship benefits, right? Um, and then it says, look, one of the problems is that we don't actually know if dating apps are a good way of creating relationships for people because we can point to all these examples of like connections being made that are not particularly strong, and people spending, literally weeks of their life swiping, trying to find connections and not making connections. And, just as much as it can grow good relationships, connecting people who might not otherwise have ever interacted, it can also make people like horrifically depressed and even suicidal. So the social benefits are, kind of up in the air. It notes that there is a limited amount of research that people who met online might not necessarily be as happy as people who met like in person, but the research is like very very tentative, and it could be that like part of that unhappiness stems from social perceptions of your relationship, where you feel judged for like having formed a online connection rather than like an in-person connection, and like maybe your friends and family feel like the person you met isn't a perfect match because they didn't have a chance to influence your say, etc., etc. Anyways, the article's main focus was this idea that like English researchers are working on this app that's going to be launching soon. I don't believe the name is mentioned, where they're trying to study long-term impacts of dating. And so any connections that are formed on that app, they're going to follow over time and see, did these people end up together? How strong was their relationship? Let's check in. Kind of like that film thing where like every 7 years they check up on people. I think it's called Seven Up. The whole idea being, hey, how do people evolve over time? Well, let's look at a slice of life and try to understand the bigger picture. But buried in here was a fascinating anecdote, and that was this. In 2014, one of OkCupid's founders caused uproar when he admitted that the company had experimented by presenting users with badly matched profiles, telling them they were very good matches to see if the pairs would converse as much as genuinely well matched ones. They did. The experiment was widely judged to be unethical, but it did suggest that who people think they're compatible with isn't necessarily who they're compatible with. So I read a little bit about this, and this is fascinating because we all have this idea that like even if it's completely like bullshit and like they're using, the most basic pattern recognition imaginable, dating apps are using some like basic form of evaluation to determine compatibility. Like someone says that they're Christian, the app is theoretically trying to match you with someone who is like Christian or in that realm. It's not trying to match you as strongly with people who are like strongly identifying as atheists. And you can imagine that for like any form of preferences. And OkCupid is literally hundreds, if not thousands, of questions by now where you can like indicate things you believe and how strongly you believe them, which makes the algorithm, able to pinpoint more accurately how compatible you might be with someone. But this was actually them just kind of randomly pairing people together. And when they just randomly pair people together, people are like, oh, this person seems charming and interesting. And wow, isn't it crazy that the app, connected me with someone who's this different, but also we have so much in common with? The insinuation seems to be one of the most helpful ways to get people to talk on dating apps is to tell them, whether it's true or not, that someone thinks that they'd be a good match. And this plays into, I think, some interesting psychology about humans. And this is, I think, to a certain extent, why therapy works. If someone tells you to do something, you're more likely to do that thing. If someone who you consider to be an authority gives you advice, you're more likely to follow that advice, even if you have already thought that you should do that thing. And so, in the same way, I think one of the main failings of all these new dating apps, the thing that they haven't been able to succeed at, is creating genuine connections, because genuine connections are not how accurately can you pair someone up based off of political beliefs, based off of individual questions, based off of, this whole phrenology thing, like those AI dating apps are like, let's compare facial features. It's that all you really need to do is provide this authoritative space where somebody somewhere says this person might be good for you, and then you're off to the races. I could be completely off base, but like I'm really fascinated by what this new research will indicate about, how matchmaking and pairing is done, because I think there's a decent chance that like relationships formed on like intense connectivity are not necessarily as strong as relationships that were kind of formed through pure luck.
Oh gosh, this is interesting. I would say that if your therapist is telling you to do things, maybe get a new therapist. If they suggest things, that's great. But if they're
Yeah.
like, "Hey, stop seeing this person," yeah, get a new therapist. Um, this is interesting. I would say that the vast majority of the time, the people that like Hinge, for instance, told me was a good match were like not people that I was necessarily interested in. So that's interesting. Very rarely was like, oh, let me, message this person that they think I'd be compatible with because I trusted me more than I trusted their algorithm. So maybe that's just me. But
That's fair.
I don't know. This is interesting. This is interesting psychology. I don't know. I keep hearing about these people that are like, "Oh, I hated him when I first met him and now we're like in love and we've been married for 50 years." So, I don't know. I don't know.
I, look, I'm not saying this is going to work for all relationships. There are plenty of examples where like people get married and it's kind of a Las Vegas wedding and then they get divorced like 2 weeks later. We see all these reality TV shows where like handsome billionaire beefcake marries a lady and then they get divorced in 10 seconds. I think, however, there is something to this idea that like people who are immediately compatible might have a really easy way of like going through relationships, and people who are not that compatible may find themselves naturally adjusting to their partner to make it work and have just as strong of a relationship. We focus, I think, a lot on Western ideas of like love and romance, and we very rarely have touched upon Eastern ideas. And you have examples of like Indian culture where often the parents will matchmake and try to find people for the other partner. I can't comment on the strength of those relationships. All I know is that research indicates they're incredibly long lasting. And if that's the metric we're going on in terms of like romantic success, maybe that's a useful one. Now, as divorce becomes more commonly accepted and legally available in those parts of the world, maybe we'll see, a completely different trend. But yeah, like, we adjust ourselves around our coworkers, we adjust ourselves around our friends and family. Both our internal monologues as well as like our beliefs are changed constantly by like brushing up against people and exchanging ideas. So I don't know why it would be so crazy that like the same could happen in the world of romance.
Wow. It's an interesting concept though. The fact that they were doing this for so long and nobody had any idea.
Yeah. I've referenced some of their stuff on the show, but for a while they had, blog posts where they dug into data. I referenced one of them in the Why Women Deserve Less breakdown, where I was like, look, OkCupid made this claim, but the claim was kind of ridiculous on the face because they were saying that like the average woman thought that the average man was significantly less attractive than he actually was, but also the average man took incredibly ugly photos. So
So fair.
I have to wonder, how much actual meaningful data OkCupid was deriving from these studies, because just as easily as they could make these experiments, they could easily misinterpret them. And I think very rarely were they releasing the raw data to allow other people to double check their experiments. I could be completely off base. I think there's something to it, but I also think that like it's one data point in a sea of many. Please don't, take this fact back to your families, dear listeners, and be like, Joel told me something today. Because again, I'm someone who thought my electric vehicle had a four-cylinder engine. I'm not an expert on anything.
I love that fact. I'm going to quote you on that a lot. I appreciate that you are human too. I appreciate that fact.
I showed my four-cylinder engine the door, Naomi.
Not in 2024. We don't have four-cylinder engines.
It's true. Okay, that's all I had for you. Any last closing thoughts on the wild, wacky world of modern dating?
I think this is great. Dating is always evolving. It's fascinating. I do have to say that as a closing note, I would like to be more inclusive. And instead of saying wear a condom, I would like to say wear protection because that is more inclusive.
Yeah. Hey, genocide bad. You know that. We know that. Please donate to charities. Yada yada yada. One slight difference this week. So since we've last recorded, there's been a lot going on in the wonderful world of campus activism, and boy, for a country that loves free speech, we also sure do love kicking college students in the face over it. So yeah, if you care about genocide and think that it's bad, and there's a college near you that's doing stuff, maybe send them some support, whether it be financial support for bail funds or just show up and wave a sign with them for a couple hours. Uh, these are people
Kick
who
kick your local frat guy in the face.
I do have to wonder, there's a lot of video footage of frat people doing bad stuff. Someone who's smart, maybe a woman in the computer science field, put together like a facial recognition app and then post photos of those guys in like women's restrooms. They know not to date them. Food for thought. But yeah, like
I love that.
these college students are standing up for what they believe in. They're standing against, a lot of peer pressure from both, police officers tear gassing them and college administrators threatening to expel them. They're probably on the right side of history. I think we're in agreement on this podcast. So, doesn't hurt to show up and also be on the right side of history. That said, as usual, normal protest stuff applies. Don't bring your cell phone. Stingrays are in use. Pack lots of water. Wear a mask. Don't have identifying tattoos. Don't wear your hair long, etc., etc., etc. That's just things we've heard.
Because we've never been to a protest before.
And that's it. We're out. Bye for now. We have many thanks for the use of our theme music, which is the song Drop by Ketsa. You can find more of their music online at ketsa.uk. You can also find Date These Guys online on Twitter and Instagram at Date These Guys or visit datetheseguys.org. If you have questions for the podcast or want to be a wealthy sugar parent, please send an email to datetheseguys@gmail.com. If you'd like to support our work, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/datetheseguys. We have behind-the-scenes information, early episode access, participation in polls, and exclusive access to a guy sibling map of date ideas for the Arizona area. Since the world sucks right now, we are currently donating all Patreon proceeds to trans organizations like the Trevor Project, a trans suicide prevention organization, and moving assistance funds for those fleeing states outlawing their very existence. Please consider becoming a member and supporting our work today.